Hey, my reactor, so we back again with chapter 4, The Rope, Kindred. There was an outdoor funeral the next day. Everyone attended. Field hands, house servants, even indifferences, Evan Flower. The minister was tall, cold, black, deep-voiced Fredman, with a face that reminded me of a picture I had of my father who had died before I was old enough to know him. The minister was literate. He held a Bible in his huge hand and read from Job until I could hardly stand to listen. I had to shrug off my aunt and uncle's strict Baptist teachings years before. But even now, especially now, the bitter words of Job could still reach me. Man, this is born. Man, that is bored of a woman of a few days and full of trouble. He comes forth like a flower and is cut down. He flees also as a shadow and continues not. I kept quiet somehow, wiped away silent tears, beat away flies and mosquitoes, heard the whispers. She's gone to hell. Don't you know folks killed? Their self goes to hell. Shut your mouth, Mr. Rufus. Make you think you down there with her. Silence. They buried her. There was a big dinner afterwards. My relatives at home had dinners at the funerals too. I had never thought about how far back the custom might go. I ate a little, then went away to the library where I could be alone, where I could write. Sometimes I wrote things because I couldn't say them, couldn't sort out my feelings about them, couldn't keep them bottled up inside me. It was a kind of writing I always destroyed afterwards. It was for no one else, not even Kevin. Rufus came in later when I was nearly written out. He came to the desk, sat down in my old chair. I was in his chair, and put his head down. We didn't say anything, but we sat together for a while. The next day, he took me to town with him, took me to the old brick courthouse, and let me watch while he had certificates of freedom drawn up for his children. If I bring them back, he said on the ride home, would you take care of them? I shook my head. It wouldn't be good for them, Ruth. This isn't my home. They get used to me, then I'll be gone. Who then? Curry, sir, will help you. He nodded listlessly. Early one morning, a few days later, he left for Eastern Point where he could catch a steamboat to Baltimore. I offered to go with him to help with the children, but all that got me was a look of suspicion, a look I couldn't help understanding. Ruth, I don't have to go to Baltimore to escape from you. I really want to help. Just stay here, he said. And he went out to talk to Evan before he left. He knew how I had gone home last. He had asked me, and I had told him. But why? He had demanded. You could have killed yourself. There's worse things than being dead, I had said. He had turned and walked away from me. Now he watched more than he had before. He couldn't watch me all the time, of course, and unless he wanted to keep me chained, he couldn't prevent me from taking one route or another out of his world, if that was what I wanted to do. He couldn't control me. That clearly both bothered him. Evan was in the house more than he had to be while Ruth was gone. He said little to me, gave me no orders, but he was there. I took refuge in Margaret's room, and she was so pleased. She talked earnestly. I found myself laughing and actually holding conversation with her as though we were just a couple of lonely people talking without the extra burden of stupid barriers. Rufus came to the house carrying the doctor, the girl, and leading the boy who seemed to look even more like him. Joe saw me in the hall and ran to me. Aunt Dana, and a hug later. I can read better now. Daddy's been teaching me. Want to hear? Sure I do. I looked up at Rufus. Daddy. He glared at me tight-lipped as though daring me to speak. All I wanted to say, though, was, what took you so long? The boy had spent his short life calling his father master. But now that he's no longer had a mother, I suppose Rufus thought it was time he had a father. I managed to smile at Ruth. I got this long chapter, y'all. I managed to smile at Ruth, a real smile. I didn't want him feeling embarrassed or defensive for finally acknowledging his son. He smiled back, saying, relax. How about my how about my getting classes going again? He nodded. I guess the others haven't had time to forget much. They hadn't, as it turned out. I had only been away for 3 months. The children had had a kind of an early summer vacation. Now they went back to school, and I slowly went to work on Rufus, began to push him towards Fran and a few more of them, perhaps several more of them, perhaps in his will all of them. I had heard of slaveholders doing such things. The Civil War was still 30 years away. I might be able to get some of the adult slaves free while they still were young enough to build new lives. I might be able to do some good for everyone. Finally, at least. I felt secure enough to try, now that my own freedom was within reach. Rufus had been keeping me with him more than he needed me now. He called me to share his meals openly, and he seemed to listen when I talked to him about freeing the slaves, but he made no promises. I wonder whether he thought making a will was foolish at his age, or maybe it was freeing more slaves that he thought was foolish. He didn't say anything, so I couldn't tell. Finally, though, he did answer me, told me much more than I wanted to know. None of it should have surprised me at all. Dana, he said one afternoon in the library, I have to be crazy and to make a will freeing these people and then tell you about it. I could die damn young for that kind of craziness. I had to look at him to see whether he was serious, but looking at him confused me even more. He was smiling, but I got the feeling he was completely serious. He believed I would kill him to free his slaves. Strangely, the idea has not occurred to me. My suggestion had been innocent, but he might have had a point. Eventually, it would have occurred to me. I used to have nightmares about you, he said. They started when I was little, right after I set fire to the draperies. Remember the fire? Of course. I dream about you and wake up in a cold sweat. Dream about me killing you? Not exactly, he paused, gave me a look, a long, unreadable look. I dream about you leaving me. I frowned. That was close to the thing Kevin had heard him say. The thing had been awakened Kevin suspicious. I leave, I said carefully. I have to. I don't belong here. Yes, you do. As far as I'm concerned, you do. But that's not what I mean. You leave and sooner or later you come back. But in my nightmares, you leave without helping me. You walk away and leave me in trouble, hurting, maybe dying. Oh, are you sure those dreams started when you were little? They sound more like something you would have come up with after your fight with Isaac. They got worse than he admitted, but they started way back at the fire. As soon as I realized you could help me or not, just as you chose, I had those nightmares for years. Then when Alice has been here a while, they went away. Now they come back. He stopped, looked at me as though he expected me to say something, to reassure him, perhaps to promise him that I would never do such a thing. But I couldn't quite bring myself to say those words. You see, he said quietly. I moved uncomfortably in my chair. Ruth, do you know how many people live to great old ages without ever getting into the kind of trouble that causes you to need me? If you don't trust me, then you have more reasons than ever to be careful. Tell me I can't trust you. More discomfort. You keep doing things that make it impossible for me to trust you, even though you know it has to work both ways. He shook his head. I don't know. I never know how to treat you. You confuse everybody. You sound too white to the field hands, like some kind of traitor, I guess. I know what they think. Daddy always thought you were dangerous because you knew too many white ways. But you were black, too black, he said. The kind of black who watches and thinks and makes trouble. I told that to Alice and she laughed. She said sometimes Daddy showed more sense than I did. She said he was right about you and that I find out someday. I jumped. Had Alice really said such a thing? And my mother, continued Rufus calmly, says if she closes her eyes while you and her are talking, she can forget you're black without even trying. I'm black, I said. Even when you took me, hold up. I'm black, I said. And when you sell a black man away from his family, just because he talked to me, you can't expect me to have any good feelings towards you. He looked away. We hadn't really discussed Sam before. We had talked around him, alluded to him without quite mentioning him. He wanted you, said Rufus. I stared at him knowing why we haven't spoken to Sam. It was too dangerous. It could lead to speaking of other things. We needed safe subjects now. Rufus and I, the price of corn, supplies for the slaves, that sort of thing. Sam didn't do anything, I said. You sold him for what you thought he was thinking. He wanted you, Rufus repeated. So do you, I thought. No Alice to take the pressure off of my offer anymore. It was time for me to go home. I started to get up. Don't leave, Dana. I stopped. I didn't want to run away from him. I didn't want to give him any indication that I was going to the attitude reopen it. Send the new scar tissue at my wrist. I sat down again, and he leaned back in his chair and looked at me until I wish I had taken the chance of hurrying away. What am I going to do when you go home this time, he whispered. You'll survive. I wonder why I should bother. For your children, at least, I said. Her children, they're all you had left of her. He closed his eyes, rubbed one hand over them. They should be your children now, he said. If you had any feelings for them, you'll stay. For them, you know I can't. You could if you wanted to. I wouldn't hurt you, and you wouldn't have to hurt yourself again. You wouldn't hurt me until something frustrates you, make you angry or jealous. You wouldn't hurt me until someone hurts you, Ruth. I know you. I couldn't stay here even if I didn't have a home to go back to. And someone's waiting for me there. That cabin? Yes. I wish I had shot him. If you had, you would be dead yourself by now. He turned his body so that he could face me squarely. You say that as though it means something. I got up to leave. There was nothing more to be said. He had asked for what he knew I could not give, and I refused. You know, Dana, he said softly, when you sent Alice to me that first time, I saw how much she hated me. I thought I'd fall asleep beside her and she'll kill me. She'll hit me with a candlestick. She'll set fire to the bed. She'll bring a knife up from the cookhouse. I thought all that, but I wasn't afraid. Because if she killed me, that would be that. Nothing else will matter. But if I live, I will have her. And by God, I had to have her. He stood up and came over to me. I stepped back, but he caught my arms anyway. You're so much like her, I can hardly stand it, he said. Let me go, Ruth. You were one woman, he said. You and her, one woman. Two half of a whole. I had to get away from him. Let me go, or I'll make your dream real. Abandonment. The one weapon Alice hasn't had. Rufus didn't seem to be afraid of dying. Now in his grief, he seemed almost to one death. But he was afraid of dying alone, afraid of being deserted by the person he had depended on for so long. He stood holding my arm, perhaps trying to decide what he should do. After a moment, I felt his grip loosen and I pulled away. I knew I had to go now before he submerged his fear. He could do it. He could talk himself into anything. I left the library, went up the main stairs, then the attic stairs, over to my bag, my knife. Footsteps on the stairs, the knife. I opened it, hesitated and slipped the knife blade still open back into my bag. He opened the door, came in, looked around the big, hot, empty rooms. He saw me at once, but still he looked around to see whether we were alone. We were. He came over and sat next to me on my pallet. I'm sorry, Dana, he said. Sorry for what he had nearly done, or for what he was about to do? Sorry, he had apologized to me many times in many ways before, but his apology has always been distance. Eat with me, Dana. Sarah is cooking up something special. Or here, Dana, here's a new book I brought for you in town. Or here, some clothes, Dana. Maybe you can make yourself something from it. Things, gifts given when he knew he had hurt or offended me, but he had never before said, I'm sorry, Dana. I looked at him uncertainly. I never felt so lonesome in my life, he said. The words touched me as no other could have. I knew about loneliness. I found my thoughts going back to the time I had gone home without Kevin. The loneliness, the fear, sometimes the hopelessness. I had felt then hopelessness wouldn't be a sometime thing to Ruth. Though Alice was dead and buried, he had only his children left, but at least one of them had also loved Alice, Joe. Where's my mama go? He demanded on his first day home. Away, Rufus had said. She went away. When is she coming back? I don't know. The boy came to me. Aunt Dana, where my mama go? Honey, she died. Died? That's like Aunt Snurry, who at last had drilled the final distance to her reward. She had lived over 80 years, had come over from Africa. People said Nigel had made a boss and Murray had been laid to rest near where Alice laid now. But Mama wasn't old. No, she was sick, Joe. Daddy said she went away, well, to heaven. No. He had cried, and I tried to comfort him. I remember the pain of my own mother's death, grief, loneliness, uncertainty in my aunt and uncle. I had held the boy and told him he still had his daddy. Please, God. And their servant and Curry and Nigel loved him. They wouldn't let anything happen to him, as though they had the power to protect him or even themselves. I let Joe go to his mother's cabins to be alone for a while. He wanted to. Then I told Rufus what I had done. And Rufus hadn't known whether to hit me or thank me. He had glared at me, the skin of his face drawn tight, intense. Then, finally, he had relaxed and nodded and gone out to find his son. Now he sat with me, being sorry and lonely and wanted me to take the place of the dead. You never hated me, did you? He asked. Never for long. I don't know why. You worked hard to earn my hatred, Ruth. She hated me from the first time I forced her. I don't blame her. Until just before she ran, she had stopped hating me. I wonder how long it would take you. What? To stop hating me. Oh God, almost against my will. I closed my fingers around the handle of the knife still concealed in my bag. He took my other hand, held it between his own in a grip that I knew would only be gentle until I tried to pull away. Ruth, I said, your children, they're free. But they're young. They need you to protect their freedom. Then it's up to you, isn't it? I twist my hand, try to get it away from him in sudden anger. And at once, his hold went from caressing to imprisonment. My right hand had become wet and slippery on the knife. It's up to you, he repeated. No, goddammit, it isn't. Keeping you alive has been up to me for too long. Why didn't you shoot yourself when you started to? I wouldn't have stopped you. I know. The softness of his voice made me look at him. So what else do I have to lose? He asked. He pushed me back on the pallet, and for a few minutes we lay there still. What was he waiting for? What was I waiting for? He laid with his head on my shoulder, his left arm around me, his right hand still holding my hand, and slowly I realized how easy it would be for me to continue to be still and forgive him even this. So easy in spite of all my talk, but it would be so hard to raise the knife, drive it into the flesh. I had to say so many times, so hard to kill. He was not hurting me, will not hurt me if I remain as I was. He was not his father, old and ugly, brutal and disgusted. He smelled of soap as though he had bathed recently for me. The red hair was neatly combed and a little damp. I would never be to him what Tess had been to his father, a thing passed around like the whiskey jug at a husking. He wouldn't do that to me or sell me or, no. I could have feel the knife in my hand, still slipping with preparation. A slave was a slave. Anything could be done to her, and Rufus was Rufus, erratic, generous, and vicious. I could accept him as my ancestor, my younger brother, my friend, but not as my master and not as my lover. He had understood that once. I twitched sharply, broke away from him. He caught me, trying not to hurt me. I was aware of him trying not to hurt me, even as I raised the knife, even as I sank it into his side. He screamed. I had never heard anyone scream that way, an animal sound. He screamed again, a low, ugly gurgle. He lost his hold on my hand for a moment, but caught my arm before I could get away. Then he brought up the fist of his free hand to punch me once and again, as the patroller had done so long ago. I pulled the knife free of him somehow, raised it and brought it down again into his back. This time he only grunted. He collapsed across me, somehow and alive, still holding my arm. I lay beneath him, half conscious from the blows and sick. My stomach seemed to twist and I vomited on both of us. Dana, a voice, a man voice. I managed to turn my head and see Nigel standing in the doorway. Dana, what? Oh no, God, no. Nigel moaned. Nigel, moaned Rufus, and he gave a long shuddering sound. His body went limp and leading across me. I pushed him away somehow. Everything but his hand stood on my arm. Then I convulsed with terrible wrenching sickness. Something harder and stronger than Rufus' hand clamps down on my arm, squeezing it, stiffening it, pressing into it, painlessly at first, melting into it, mashing with as though somehow my arm were being assorted into something cold and non-living, something paint, plastic, wood, and the wall of my living room. I was back at home, in my own house, in my own time, but I was still caught somehow, joined to the walls as though my arm were growing out of it or growing into it. From the elbow to the end of the fingers, my left arm had become a part of the wall. I looked at the spot where flesh joined with plaster, stared at it, and stared at it. It was the exact spot Rufus' fingers had grasped. I pulled my arm towards me, pulled hard, and suddenly there was an avalanche of pain, red impossible agony, and I screamed and I screamed. So y'all, that's the end of that chapter, and we'll be going to the end, the end of the book, and we finished, so I'll be back.